This is CBC Here and Now.
Roads eroding in Corner Brook.
After heavy rain, mild temperatures, and melting snow hit the west coast.
And tonight, they're now bracing for freezing temperatures.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Anthony Germain. Well, with a quick warm-up and heavy rain, it is messy in Corner Brook.
Crews have spent the day trying to prevent major flooding, and now they're gearing up for a flash freeze. Here and Now's Colleen Connors was out in it today, and she joins us now live. So, Colleen, what did you see?
Well, Carolyn, Corner Brook people today experienced 8 degrees, green grass patches on their front lawn, and a little bit of a sense of panic in some areas. I want you to take a look at some of the worst damage around Corner Brook today. And what happened was that it warmed up, of course, melted some of that snow along with that heavy rain, and that pushed this slop down onto the roads, and it made a huge mess. So the melted snow, or that sloppy stuff, well, it clogged the drains, and that's what crews spent working on today, trying to clear the drains to get that water down. Now, O'Connell Drive was closed around lunchtime today while the crews worked there, and school was closed this morning in Corner Brook, but it did reopen later on this afternoon. Now, the city staff did hear about some basements that were flooded around town. Some residents did have water, and city crews helped as best they could by dropping off some sandbags there. But I have to say, the worst damage I saw today was on Charles Street off of Elizabeth, and that's where water was literally cascading down the roads, taking big chunks of pavement along with it. And that's where I met up with the Director of Public Works, Donnie Burden, and he explained what was going on.
So basically we had head walls plug up above, upstream, which caused significant water to come down the street. And coming down the street, it basically washed out the shoulders. So it's just minor shoulder damage. It's not as bad as it looks.
Have these areas fixed up in just a couple of days, to the point where we might not even know that it happened. He said this is real minor, although like you saw, it doesn't look very good. Now, the best part though is that Burden told me this is not as bad as last year. This is nothing compared to the floods that we saw here last year this time.
Well, that's definitely good to hear. But Colleen, what about tonight? Because the temperature is expected to take a pretty big dive overnight.
It certainly is, that's right. So we were supposed to get some really cool temperatures. It's actually starting to cool off a little bit now around supper hour, but we're going to get maybe -5, as cold as -13. Now, Burden also explained to me that the city staff is ready to go. They'll have salt trucks and sand trucks out on the roads before it gets too slick. But, you know, I have a feeling it's going to be pretty slippery out there tonight. Let's bring in Ashley Braweiler now, our meteorologist, just to find out how cold it's really going to get tonight.
Yeah, we're going to see those temperatures drop right across the board through most of Newfoundland. Now, Labrador is already sitting well below zero. The temperatures are actually going to climb as we head towards the morning hours. So this is what we're looking at right now. Number of areas sitting well above 0 degrees, still 8 in Corner Brook, anticipating these temperatures to start dropping because Port aux Basques is already down to 0 degrees. That was 6 degrees this afternoon. And like I said, we'll continue to see these temperatures drop even more so as we head towards Wednesday. And it looks like Thursday we're in for another bit of a warm up. So here's a look at the current satellite and radar. We're seeing some heavier bands of precipitation start to make their way towards the Avalon. And then we're starting to see things taper off for the most part for the west coast. As we head through the night tonight, things will definitely improve. Labrador is still very much in the thick of a winter storm. I'll have all the details and your full forecast when I come back. Anthony?
Thanks, Ashley. A shocking story in Quebec. Former Bloc Québécois leader Gilles Ducep's mother has died, apparently from hypothermia. Hélène Raouli-Hott was 93 years of age.
Learning about it now, my condolences go out to Mr. Duceppe and his entire family.
Hott was found outside a senior's residence in Montreal's East End, and it appears that she left the building after a fire alarm was triggered early Sunday morning, and she couldn't get back inside the building. There was a severe weather warning at the time, and the temperatures plunged to -20 degrees. Her body wasn't found for several hours. Quebec's coroner's office is investigating. Police say there is no criminal aspect to her death. The remains of two Beothuk people currently held at the National Museum of Scotland will be returned to Canada. The burial remains of Beothuk chief Nona Sabusut and his wife Damasduit were discovered in the 1800s by a Scottish explorer. William E. Cormack had the remains sent back to Scotland, his home country, and they've been there ever since. Demasduit was captured by the European fur traders in 1819, and she was given the English name Mary March. And her husband tried to rescue her. The push to have the remains returned was started by Chief Michel Joe of the Meowpukek First Nation in Conn River, and that was followed by requests from both Premier Dwight Ball and the federal government. The remains will be sent to the Canadian Museum of History in Ottawa, where they will join the remains of at least 10 other Beothuk people that are stored in the vaults of those museums. And that's going to stay that way until a burial can be planned. MP Scott Sims says the Scottish Museum listened to requests from this province.
They listened to us, and of course they came to the conclusion that what we're doing is right. It's right for us, it's right for the province, it's right for this entire country. And it's reconciliation for us for a legendary tribe that existed in Newfoundland and Labrador. How do we respect the remains that have been handed back to us? How do we do this through a process of reconciliation? And how do we do this so that we can commemorate and respect the history of Newfoundland and Labrador, and in particular, the respect of First Nations groups by way of the Beothuk?
Well, the National Museum in Scotland isn't doing interviews today, but they did tell us that there is no timeline yet established for the move of these remains. Sims says once they are in Ottawa, the next phase of that conversation starts, and that is where to put the remains when they finally arrive in this province. Now, I spoke with Scott Sims through FaceTime just before we went on the air tonight, and we'll have that interview for you in our next half hour of Here and Now.
Now to some news from the courts. Brandon Cody has been sentenced to 6 years for attempted murder after pleading guilty on Friday. Justice Vikas Kaladkar says he believes Cody is truly remorseful for what happened that night. In February 2017, Cody went into his ex-girlfriend's apartment in St. John's with a knife. He found Taylor King in bed with her and stabbed him 10 times. After pleading guilty, Cody apologized to King's mother, saying he was deeply sorry. As part of a plea deal, the Crown agreed to drop other charges against Cody, including aggravated assault and break-and-entering. Cody will have to give a DNA sample and is forbidden from having any contact with the victim or the witness. And the trial for RNC officer Joe Smythe is continuing. His lawyer had requested the charge of obstruction of justice be thrown out, but that request was dismissed. And today, Smythe took the stand in provincial court defending himself against a criminal charge. Smythe admits he made a mistake, but said he did not intentionally obstruct justice. Here and Now's Mark Quinn joins us now with the details. So, Mark, what happened today?
Well, Carolyn, in court today, Joseph Smythe told the court what he had told investigators earlier. He said on that day he was just doing his job and he had no malice towards the motorcycle driver who he issued 4 tickets to back in 2017. Now, all of those tickets were later dismissed in court. One was for running a red light, but video from a camera on the motorcycle shows the light was in fact green. Smythe now admits he was wrong about that ticket, but he's adamant that he didn't intentionally write false tickets in 2017. Now, Smythe's lawyer Jerome Kennedy is arguing Smythe never should have been charged with obstruction of justice in the first place. Kennedy said hundreds of traffic tickets are dismissed in court every year, but none of the officers who wrote those tickets face criminal charges. Now, Kennedy argues Smythe was only charged because of his past history. Back in 2015, while on duty, Smythe fatally shot a man he was questioning. Smythe says he was forced to shoot Don Dunphy after Dunphy pointed a rifle at him. In 2017, a judge found Smythe had used appropriate force in self-defense. Now, Joseph Smythe's trial is scheduled to continue tomorrow here in Provincial Court in St. John's. Live in St. John's, I'm Mark Quinn for Here and Now.
About 250 United Airlines passengers might finally be at their destinations now after a freezing night trapped on the tarmac. Their flight was heading from New Jersey to Hong Kong, a long flight on Saturday, when a medical emergency diverted the plane to Happy Valley Goose Bay. First responders took the sick passenger to hospital, but the plane couldn't take off again because of a mechanical issue with one of its doors. It was about -30 outside, and the temperature on board started to dip. Passengers were told the Goose Bay Airport couldn't handle everyone at customs, so they all had to stay in their seats. Food was getting low, but on Sunday evening, about 16 stranded hours later, the passengers were transferred onto a rescue plane and sent back to Newark.
It sucked. It's just like, especially because I have a lot of brand loyalty to United, I fly nothing but United. I I don't fly any other airline, and you know, I fly every week for work, and that's what I've been doing for the last almost 20 years. And you know, I make it a point to always give my business to United, and for them to kind of drop the ball like this, you know, it's disheartening.
Ouch.
16 hours.
That's a long time to be trapped on a plane.
You better like pretzels if you're stuck on a plane that long. Whoa.
Well, Anthony, you know, it may be hard to believe, but there was yet another robbery using heavy machinery over the weekend.
We just did this on Friday, didn't we? Police have arrested 2 men after a front-end loader tore into a bank in the east end of St. John's early Saturday morning.
Alarms alerted police to the Bank of Montreal on Newfoundland Drive around 4:30 a.m. Police stopped the pair on the Trans-Canada Highway. 40-year-old Jamie Kennedy and 41-year-old Corey Quilty were both charged with break-and-enter and theft of a vehicle.
And the pair also face a number of weapons and firearm charges. Now, since last Sunday, front-end loaders were used to access cash machines at the TD Bank on Elizabeth Avenue in St. John's and a Scotiabank branch in Long Pond.
As well, a piece of heavy equipment was used to crash into the front windows of Sobeys on Kelsey Drive, where the suspects made off with an ATM. The 2 men were held for a court appearance today.
So that amounts to 4 robberies on the Avalon in just 1 week.
Yes, one used a front-end loader, another a backhoe, and there was an excavator. All 4 brazen robberies targeted ATMs.
So the question we were asking last week and are still asking this week, given that there was another one the weekend, how difficult is it to steal this kind of machinery? Well, here now's Cecil Hare looks into what's involved in getting access, and the results just might surprise you.
It's all about getting the key to get the engines started, and the keys are easy to get. My friend Thomas here is going to show how easy by going in and buying me one. Thomas has been in there for just a few minutes now. He just sent me a text and says it's all good, and so far we know that they asked for his driver's license. Thomas, you look like you have a key and a receipt in your hand. How did you make it?
One Caterpillar master key. That's good for any piece of Caterpillar equipment, $11.37. Didn't have to prove I owned a piece of equipment, anything.
I'm in Shearstown now with this newly purchased key, and I'm with Bruce Holmes of Bruce Holmes Trucking. And Bruce, I'm going to try this key in this Caterpillar behind us.
Sure.
Okay. There's a switch here that I didn't know where it was. Yeah. And that would prevent me from turning this on.
It's a master switch, yeah. And this one is located right out in your face, basically. Is right here, and that turns on all the power to the full system of the piece of equipment. A lot of them are hidden in different places, like in the engine compartment, on the older gear, and some of the newer gear. But this one's right up in your face here, so nothing won't work without that switch on.
Okay, Bruce, you take the key that I got yesterday and try to open the door. So the key that opens the door starts the engine?
And for the most part, the key that opens the piece of equipment is the one that'll start the engine, yes, that's for sure.
I don't know how to get this moving. Well, what do you think of the knowledge of the people who are committing these crimes? You know, what's the feeling about what they must know in order to operate this stuff?
Well, anybody that's going to operate a piece of equipment, old or new, you got to know the basic fundamentals of the piece of equipment itself. Average Joe off the street is not going to get aboard of an excavator or front end loader and start it up and drive away. And you got to know, you know, what you're doing in order to get this stuff to basically move or even start. So
to start and move.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no doubt about it.
I wonder if there's a way to change that.
I am amazed. I mean, I know Cecil Hare told me he was looking for a career change, but I never thought he'd be actually in heavy machinery. But it's a very serious story, though, putting all jokes aside. I mean, the key, those machines are worth thousands and thousands of dollars, and we have 4 in a week? Unbelievable.
At least they caught 2 of them.
That's true.
Allegedly.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's right. They're charged. Nothing has yet been proven.
Should we be raising this with our patients? Should we not be? Because currently we don't.
Physician-assisted death and the patient that has Dr. Susan McDonald thinking more about it.
She'll tell us about Leo and what happened to him. That's ahead. Welcome back to Here Now. Well, Ottawa froze its way into being the coldest capital city in the world this weekend, which takes some taking because usually Moscow, I think, in Russia, and Ulaanbaatar, I'm showing off my trivia knowledge here, in Mongolia are usually the coldest capital. So Ottawa, way to go. You've won something.
Oh, great. And despite today's spring-like temperatures here on the Avalon, many eastern corners of the country, ourselves included, were also in the grips of brutally cold temperatures. Environment Canada issued alerts from Manitoba right through to Atlantic Canada as the mercury dropped to the -20s and even colder this weekend. Heavy snow and freezing rain led to travel advisories across the Maritimes, forcing flight cancellations and school closures.
And a sudden rise in temperatures, well, that brought flooding to Moncton, New Brunswick, instead of all that snow that you see right there. But then in Moncton, the streets quickly froze as the thermometer plunged again. Ontario and Quebec are expected to see another frigid night tonight with lows in Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto at -20 or colder. Can you believe that? Especially Toronto. That never happens. Right?
And the snow just keeps on coming in Labrador.
Happy Valley Goose Bay saw snow falling through the day on Sunday, and they continue to dig out today.
The town is being told to postpone any unnecessary travel in the whiteout conditions. Schools were closed today and the military base was shut down except for emergency services. About 30 centimeters are expected to have fallen by day's end.
Yeah, when they close a military base, it's bad. More snow is expected overnight and won't taper off until tomorrow afternoon. But everybody that CBC News spoke with today says it's just all part of the big land's appeal.
We choose to live in beautiful Labrador, so we take the good with the bad, so it's not so bad.
I don't wake up and grow this. We live in a land of snow, right? If you don't like to live in the snow, then I don't think you should live here in Labrador.
This weather forecast is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. 5,000 kilometers of groomed trails are waiting to be explored. Embrace winter today.
We saw one of those skidoos rocketing through the snow. Ashley was actually on one of those skidoos over the weekend. So
Not that one, but on.
So you had quite the weekend, I hear.
I did. I had a great weekend.
What did you do?
Went out to Port Blandford. I keep wanting to say Blanchford, but that's definitely not right. Clarenville area, and went snowboarding for the very first time.
Oh, nice. How did you do?
There
you're
you go.
You're a one-planker now.
Yeah, well, I think you can tell by the snow on my snow pants how it was going.
Okay, that's pretty good turning there.
Yeah.
So you did a lot of carving?
I tried.
Okay, that's
This
good.
was about...
I suspect something, yeah.
You can see me go, and there I go.
Well, that's pretty good.
Oh, it was a slow motion fall. It didn't feel like it.
Very graceful, and at least you're smiling.
Yeah. And how are you feeling after all of that?
I am very sore today.
Yeah.
It's
snow
difficult.
looked perfect.
It was honestly perfect conditions. The weekend was absolutely stunning as far as weather goes, especially where I was. But
that's great, because I know for you people in Clarenville and Whitehills, they're really suffering of late. So it's great to see that much snow there, because they've had a really, really rough season.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was really nice.
Keep the snow coming, Ashley.
Yeah, except for today. That didn't happen today.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we fast forwarded from winter this weekend to spring this morning, essentially, right across the board. Those temperatures, as I showed you before, still very warm in the single digits right across the board. Now up through Labrador, those temperatures are much colder, and we're actually going to see them drop as we head through the night, especially for western portions of Labrador. Towards the coast, though, these temperatures are actually going to climb as that system brings the warmer temperatures in, but they're still going to stay below zero. So a number of warnings still in place. That extreme cold warning for Labrador City, as I just mentioned, those wind chills down tonight in the -40s again overnight. Otherwise, blowing snow advisories, blizzard warnings for Happy Valley Goose Bay through to Cartwright, including Rigolet, and then a winter storm warning just south of that. We also have some freezing rain warnings up through the Great Northern Peninsula and the Straits. And we're going to see that risk of freezing rain continue at least through the next couple of hours. And then eventually that warmer air in the upper atmosphere will move off. And then everything should change back over to snow tonight. And then rainfall warnings still in place for the Canaveral Peninsula as well as Burin Peninsula. And we're going to see maybe another 10 millimeters of rain. We can see where that rain is right now and the freezing rain up through the Northern Peninsula. and then eventually all of this rain will move off. If we take a look at the future tracker, it eventually moves off through the overnight tonight. By midnight for sure, we should start to see things change back over to snow for the northern peninsula, and then all of that snow will continue up through Labrador. Looking at quite a bit of snow over the next 24 hours, including what fell today. These numbers could reach 30 plus centimeters in some cases. And then into tomorrow, those winds will stay quite strong as well. So we're looking at blowing snow through the afternoon. Otherwise, we get into a more northwesterly flow. We're seeing that southerly flow today, and that will switch to northerly flow. And that's why we're going to see those temperatures drop tonight, and then everything change over to snow through the afternoon tomorrow. So here's a look at your forecast for tonight. Single digit lows below zero, -3 in Corner Brook, -4 in Port aux Basques. And then eventually we'll see those temperatures drop down. Now the winds between 50 and 80 kilometers per hour, likely those strong gusts won't or have already happened for the Avalon. So you're looking at that as we head through the night tonight. And then again, that freezing rain up through the northern peninsula will eventually change back over to snow. Temperatures dipping to -32 tonight for Labrador City. That wind chill feeling closer to -46 with that northerly wind gusting near 40 kilometers per hour, staying quite breezy overnight tonight. And then the temperatures are going to climb. So minus single digits for Cartwright tonight. Same for the Straits with those north winds still upwards of about 70 kilometers per hour. So those blowing snow and blizzard conditions certainly are going to continue. Now for tomorrow, we're going to see these temperatures drop even more so along the west coast, down to -6 for Corner Brook. Same for Port aux Basques. Central down to the minus single digits. We are looking at that potential for some snow. Not quite a bit of snow, trace maybe 5 centimeters at the most. The most will be along the west coast. And then we've got tomorrow afternoon. Still looking at cold wind chills though for Lab City and Nain. Otherwise, we're hanging on to those well above seasonal temperatures along the coast. And again, those blizzard conditions continuing. So that's a look at your forecast. We'll look ahead a little bit because the warmth is not over. I'll have all those details coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, St. John's doctor is speaking candidly tonight about a patient who took his own life. Dr. Susan McDonald is an associate professor of medicine at Memorial University. She recently wrote in the Canadian Medical Association Journal about a man she's renamed Leo, and she reflected on possibly failing in caring for him. She sat down with Here and Now's Ariana Kellant.
It was a very distressing clinical case for me because I felt at the end of the day that I hadn't done the best I could for this particular patient. And I think all clinicians, we want to do the best for our patients at all times. And so it was a reflective exercise for me to look back and say, what could I have done better? Where are the problems? And what do we need to do about it? Leo was a gentleman that I saw for his nerve pain, neuropathic pain, and we worked really hard over the course of the 5 months that I cared for him to try and get that pain under control. But nerve pain is a very complex and very difficult, very challenging type of pain to manage. And unfortunately for Leo, he fell into that very small percentage of people that, regardless of what we tried, it just wasn't very effective.
What was it about this particular case that really made you sit back and have a second thought?
I've had many, many patients who, over the years of doing palliative care, who have suffered pretty difficult deaths. The vast majority we're able to really help with, and that's what keeps me in this business. But about Leo, I don't know. I think, for one thing, I really liked him. I just really liked him. We got along very well. We had a really good relationship. I think he trusted me. I got to know him and his family. And I think the fact that he was such an intensely private person and his death was so public, and it didn't need to be that way. That there had been options. Many people still don't understand what the option of assisted dying is, whether they qualify for it. There's all sorts of rumors out there about what it is and what it is not. And I suspect that Leo likely felt the same way, didn't have the information, didn't know whether or not he could approach me about it. Perhaps he was one of those people who thought, if the doctor doesn't raise the issue, then maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. The tendency seems to be to really wait until the patient raises the issue. And that raises a number of questions and concerns for me. That there might be people like Leo who could avail of that option if they knew about it or it was offered to them. And for whatever reason, and there could be lots of different reasons why people don't ask about it or don't even think about it. So that's a missed opportunity. And yet, on the other hand, you have the potential to do harm by raising that question. And I have worried about when I have discussed, since Leo, with some patients, and I have said, well, here are all your options, and one of those does include medical aid in dying, that some people do take great offense that somebody would even say that to them.
It's right for us, it's right for the province, it's right for this entire country, and it's reconciliation for us for a legendary tribe that existed in Newfoundland and Labrador.
As you heard earlier, the remains of 2 members of the Beothuk tribe will be repatriated to Canada.
So what happens next? An MP from central Newfoundland talks about the symbolic significance of bringing the Beothuk home. years now, Indigenous groups and others in the province have been trying to get the remains of two Beothuk people repatriated from Scotland. And today, the National Museum of Scotland announced that it has reached an agreement to send the remains of Damasaduit and Nonasabusut back to Canada to the Canadian Museum of History in Ottawa. Scott Sims is the Member of Parliament for Coast of Bay's Central Notre Dame, and he joins us now from the nation's capital. So, sir, big news today. What's your reaction?
This was fantastic news today, Anthony, and I thank you so much for doing this interview for several reasons. First of all, this started for me back in 2007 when we unveiled a plaque for Damasaduit, and in doing that, we recognized the importance of to teach people about the history of the Beothuk, what they're all about, how they lived, in celebration of who they were. So this is for the entire province. So then the fight was taken up by Chief Misel Joe in Malbigay-Kokon River. And he has visited Scotland on several occasions. He went back with them with all his knowledge. But he really pushed for this. And I guess the rest of us, including myself, Dwight Ball, we just jumped on this as quick as we could. So we had to go to the Canadian government because we had to do it through the government of Canada, not through the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. And when we did that, we got a good reception from the museum in Scotland, and they were able to commit the government there. So here we go, and we're very happy.
So the significance of getting these remains sent back to Canada, Mr. Sims, what's important about this?
I think the most important thing is for our history, for our culture, for Newfoundland and Labrador, for First Nations in this country. It is a huge step towards a reconciliation that is recognition of a peoples that the last known Beothuk, of course, was Shannon-Didit, which was back in 1829 that she passed away. So it's so important now, before we reach that 200 years, to say that we need to commemorate the history of the Beothuk, what they meant to our province, and this is a good start in that direction.
Right.
So I hope that much more will come of this.
And I guess there's a sacred issue here, too. I mean, we have a Scottish explorer who was here, found these bones, brought them back to the country of his birth. Now, many, many years later, they're going to send them back to the Canadian Museum of History. Will they be staying in Ottawa, or will they be back here where they basically started their lives?
No, my understanding is that what happens next is that the Canadian Museum of History here in Ottawa, or Gatineau, will take it, and we will work towards bringing these remains to Newfoundland. So the Department of Canadian Heritage has assured me that they are going to work closely with the Newfoundland and Labrador government, and also with there are 5 stakeholder groups in Newfoundland and Labrador from the Indigenous side. And of course, we're also going to include Chief Misel Joe, who's been such a big part of it.
Right. Well, listen, Mr. Sims, certainly a big day for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and obviously it's a story. There's still a lot left to write in this chapter. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Yes, a lot's to write. Thank you, Anthony, for this. I know growing up in central Newfoundland, for all of us, the entire province, this is a major issue. Thank you to all of those through social media for helping us out on this.
I just remembered saying that we have to report this. This is wrong. This is absolutely wrong.
They complained and nothing was done.
3 women are going public with allegations against a former RCMP doctor. Welcome back to Here and Now. The RCMP is facing new allegations of a cover-up of sexual assaults on young female recruits. CBC News has learned that 30 women have come forward to the Toronto police complaining about an RCMP doctor in Ontario who they say assaulted them during pre-employment medical exams. And this comes on the heels of a similar case in Halifax involving a doctor with the Mounties who faces allegations from 100 men and women. It's prompted a brand new $135 million class action lawsuit against the RCMP. The CBC's Dave Seglins has the story, but first a warning. Some will find the details of this report disturbing.
Rubbing my legs up and down, he starts to pull at my nipples, and I asked, why are you doing that?
He was getting his jollies under the guise of being a doctor for the RCMP.
These three women are still haunted, still angry about what happened. It was 1989. Helen Henderson, Vicky Gravel, Sylvie Corriveau. They were young, newly hired at the RCMP's Toronto Airport Detachment. They got to talking about the RCMP doctor, John A. McDougall, and the breast and vaginal exams he did, the last step before they were hired.
I think I just remembered saying, we have to report this. This is wrong. This is absolutely wrong.
They did complain, alleging the doctor sexually assaulted them during those appointments.
So, what happened?
Nothing. Nothing.
Within a month, the RCMP brass stepped in and told them there would be no criminal charges and quickly closed the file. Now, the doctor stayed on the RCMP for another 2 years.
Their lack of action resulted in more females being sexually assaulted. They could have stopped this.
Dr. McDougall was asked to respond to the allegations by the College of Physicians and Surgeons. He explained he was teaching recruits proper breast self-examination technique. I am deeply disappointed that the applicants, subject of this investigation, have felt in any way mistreated, he wrote.
Decades later, the three have banded together again. The Toronto police have reopened an investigation, and we've learned that in the past year, 30 women have come forward.
McDougall, now in his mid-80s, lives in a retirement home west of Toronto. According to his family lawyer, he is in round-the-clock care, no longer of sound mind.
We're going to do this together? Yes.
These women say they are tired of waiting for police. Sylvie Gravel has just filed a massive lawsuit on behalf of anyone abused by a staff doctor at the RCMP.
I think that we need to complete the circle and finish what we started 30 years ago.
Beyond compensation, what they really want is accountability, and for the RCMP to acknowledge what they say happened to them all those years ago. Dave Seglin, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, to learn more about this case and the RCMP's handling of it, please go to our national website, cbcnews.ca.
The son of an Ontario senior says his father was a victim of a so-called romance scam and that TD Bank didn't do enough to prevent it. He says there should have been red flags when his late father wired his life savings overseas during a span of 8 months. Now the son has decided to go public. The CBC's Erica Johnson has the details.
He just asked for $3,000.
Dale Hogg is talking to scammers who tricked his father into sending his life savings to Malaysia. After his wife died, Robert Hogg went on an online dating site. Within weeks, he met someone who claimed to live nearby, said she was out of the country on business. Sophia Goldstein was actually the face of scammers who convinced her target to wire money to Malaysia over and over.
October 12th, $50,000. October 24th, $50,000.
Hogg's family discovered the wire transfers after his father died of cancer in September. They added up to over $730,000.
It was a sick feeling for quite a few days.
That sickness turned to anger when he realized his father used his longtime bank branch to send 19 different wire transfers over 8 months, each time to a different person.
It's frustrating. I mean, there should have been red flags going all over the place at the bank.
TD declined an interview request. In a statement, a spokesperson said, "Our employees followed rigorous processes, including asking detailed questions at each transaction." The bank says their customer claimed he was building a house in Malaysia, says his story was consistent. The Canadian Bankers Association says banks must strike a balance between preventing fraud and protecting customers' rights to access their money. More people reported losing money in a romance scam than to any other fraud last year, almost $25 million, up from $17 million in 2016.
Banks want to be the keepers of our money. And as such, I think they have a moral and ethical obligation when you're dealing with seniors to make sure that they provide due diligence on the accounts.
Hogg is considering a lawsuit. Meantime, the scammers are unaware his father died. Their $3,000 request has now increased to $5,000.
Yeah, there we go.
He's stringing them along, hoping one day they can be found and prosecuted. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says Canada can't afford another 4 years of Justin Trudeau's Liberal government. In a campaign-style appearance in Montreal, Scheer pledged to do more for Quebec on taxes, economic development and immigration. Premier François Legault has said he wants to reduce immigration numbers in his province. Scheer says he is open to discussing whatever Legault is proposing. When asked whether he favors language and values tests for newcomers, Scheer had this to say.
Comes to ensuring that people come to Canada and integrate properly into our society, adopt Canadian principles, tolerance, equality. Those are things that the federal government absolutely has to play a greater role in ensuring that that integration is successful.
Scheer says Trudeau has done nothing to stop the flow of asylum seekers at unofficial crossings along the U.S. border with Canada. That number was over 19,000 in 2018, the vast majority entering through Quebec. A handful made the crossing into Manitoba or elsewhere in Canada. Scheer says Ottawa must fix the border and give refugee claimants better access to language training.
All right, back to this province now. With 4 bewildering bank robberies in 1 week, parody couldn't be that far behind.
No, comedian Vicky Mullally decided to make over a classic by country duo Big and Rich, ironically enough.
So just take a listen.
So I hop up in the seat and I drive into the city. Scotia Bank and CBS is looking mighty pretty. Next is Newfoundland Drive. I'm hitting BMO and the bus say, rob a bank, steal a backhoe. Don't need a job, I'll rob a bank, steal a backhoe. Earn my money? No. Rob a bank, steal a backhoe. All the boys say, rob a bank, steal a backhoe.
This weather update is brought to you by Beltone, helping the world hear better.
Well, just before we get to the weather, we have some photos to share with you from the West Coast, the South Coast. South. South.
In the words of Karen Banfield's hair from Burgeo, you just never know who you'll meet on your way to church.
And it's certainly true in beautiful Burgeo. These were taken on Sunday with the hashtag #OutportLife. And someone replied, coyote last week, caribou this week. The very saucy remark, as the population declines, the animals move in. Look how close, that's pretty amazingly close, right?
It really is.
And Karen's a very faithful viewer of the show. I got in touch with her, said, hey, can we use some of these? But, I mean, you can actually see the fur.
Yeah,
like the strands
for
of
a
it.
stroll down the street.
Yeah, can't blame caribou. Yeah, pretty close,
Oh,
eh?
yeah. That's a little closer than I would get, I think.
Doesn't mind the humans.
That'd make me a little nervous.
Great animals.
But he's
so
cute.
Beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah.
Off you go.
So how's the weather looking?
Well, we're going to look towards Wednesday's forecast now. Temperatures today obviously quite warm, but we're going to continue. I keep saying roller coaster, but that's really the only way to describe what's been happening. If we take a look at the future tracker, you can see that snow moving through the through Newfoundland. Looks like Labrador should clear out, and we're going to see that continue through the day, at least through the morning hours of Wednesday, and then that high pressure will move in, and then it looks like a mix of sun and cloud through the day on Wednesday, and then the next system starts to move in. So we're going to see cloud cover ahead of that, snow potential for Labrador, and eventually it'll make its way towards Newfoundland as well. Move in, and this track is very similar to what we've been seeing, at least for this last system. So here's a look at the forecast for Wednesday. Temperatures sitting in the minus single digits. This is around seasonal for this time of year. Up through Labrador, temperatures are going to climb back, or rather head back towards seasonal, and then Nain sitting at minus 21, Lab City minus 17, but again, still looking at that potential for some flurries. Now, that system, as I mentioned, will take the same track. So we're going to start to see that warm front push through in the afternoon on Thursday. This warm air, milder air will move in. That cold front moves in behind it. We switch directions, wind directions, and then we'll see that colder air move in. But it does look like things will generally clear out through the afternoon on Friday. It does take a little bit of some time for that system to move through. So temperatures will climb and then drop right back down again on Saturday afternoon and through the evening as well. So why is this happening? Well, it's where the jet stream is. So you can see this blocking pattern here. This is a high pressure system. That's keeping this pattern right up along the, up through Newfoundland and Labrador. This is the coldest air, and we're going to see that return again as that polar vortex makes another dip down into Ontario, and then eventually making its way towards Newfoundland and Labrador as we head towards next week. So the roller coaster continues. So here's a look at the forecast. Flurries tomorrow, -1, -2 on Wednesday, and then into Thursday we'll see that snow move in late day, change over to rain on Friday, and then those winds will pick up again. And then Saturday, generally seeing some clearing and -1. These temperatures will likely fluctuate a couple of degrees as we head towards Friday. For central Newfoundland, same thing. Some snow moves in on Thursday, rain and windy on Friday, temperature near 10 degrees, and then there's that dip again. So you're going to go 10 degrees on Friday morning, drop down to -6 into the overnight, and then those cooler temperatures sticking around for Saturday as well. Generally gray is the story for western Newfoundland, so snow will change over to rain in the afternoon, or rather towards the overnight hours of Thursday, and then continue on Friday with a high near 7 degrees. Temperatures by Saturday are going to be sitting in the -6 degree range. For eastern Labrador, look at that temperature on Friday. Mild at -1, but it does look like things will stay as snow. And then for western Newfoundland, not the case. We're going to see temperatures head back towards seasonal, so in the -teens, and then right back down to the -30s for the weekend. So let's look at your forecast. We'll look at your weather photo when I come back. Carolyn?
Thanks, Ashley. Well, hits are a big part of hockey, but they take a toll on players. We've heard a lot about the lasting brain trauma caused by concussions. Now, researchers in British Columbia have found even players who don't take big hits to the head still have slowed cognitive abilities. CBC's John Hernandez has that story.
The big hits can bring the crowd to their feet, but the hardest ones can also give pause.
Concussions are a reality in hockey, and once the game is over, the symptoms don't go away.
As the world is aware, there's a really urgent need to start addressing the concussion issues.
Over the years, the impacts of big hits have been put under the microscope. That's what's happening at this lab in Surrey, where researchers have been monitoring the brains of an entire junior hockey team for 2 seasons.
We detected slowing in their cognitive processing, and it was significant. And so that's suggesting that concussion can cause differences in your brain that are not actually observable to the naked eye.
All right, so just look straight ahead for now.
Each player wore one of these headpieces, part of a system called Brain Vital Signs. It measures a player's cognitive functions, like their ability to pay attention or process words.
Before the season, we scanned their brain vital signs, and if any of the players were concussed or diagnosed with a concussion during the season, we pulled them off the ice and we scanned them immediately.
What they found, concussed players who were cleared to return to the ice still had brain impairments. Even more surprising, players that were never concussed at all also had cognitive delays by the end of the season.
Players receiving head impacts through, tackles and collisions and falls and that type of thing, those impacts kind of accumulate over the course of the season and then create kind of functional deficits. So these are all concussion results from our study that was just published in Brain.
The results hit home for lead author Sean Fickling, a former rugby player who knows what it's like to take a big hit.
I think I took a knee to the head and I was unconscious for about 45 minutes. I kind of came to in the CT scanner. It was a pretty traumatic experience for me.
Certainly knows this. With more awareness being raised about brain trauma, these scientists hope their research can inform more thorough concussion treatment and prevention. They're urging players to be mindful of the big hits and even the small ones. John Hernandez, CBC News, Surrey.
Well, it was an absolutely beautiful weekend for parts of the island. This photo was taken this weekend and absolutely gorgeous. Any idea?
You're saying this is on the island?
Yeah.
Oh, no idea whatsoever.
It's a lovely shot.
Something Barrens.
No. I'll tell you where this photo was taken and who took it when we come back.
Welcome back.
So before we get to the picture of the day, I have a question for you because you showed us your snowboarding earlier.
Yes.
And you ski.
I do. I ski pretty well, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
If she does say so herself.
It's actually not skiing, it's snowboarding, or snowblading, I mean.
Snowblading?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how'd you find the going to one piece instead of two skis?
It's difficult when you're strapped in and
Yes.
your center of balance is off a little bit,
Mhm.
but I was determined, so
Yeah, good
I
on you.
figured I'd try it.
Looked like you did really well.
Didn't make it off the bunny hill, but that's okay.
That's right, next time.
Yeah. Well, no, I think next time I'm going to stick with the skis. Even though he looks so much cooler as a snowboarder.
It's all about that. All right,
Yeah.
take a look at the picture.
Yep, absolutely. That is exactly what it looked like this weekend, and especially if you were out
Any
snowmobiling.
hints? Any hints?
Not far from where I was.
Not far, Clarenville.
Oh.
Port Blandford.
No, it was up near Gander.
Oh, nice.
Gander.
So it wasn't too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful shot there. Thank you so much for sending that photo in.
The trees just look like they're weighted down with the snow.
With the snow and the ice, yeah.
It's pretty though.
It is beautiful. If you have any weather photos you'd like to share with while you're out exploring, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca and we will get them on the show for you.
Absolutely. Keep them coming.
Yeah. They are
Pretty much
wonderful.
does it for a Monday.
Monday,
It's
beginning
Monday.
of the
Yeah. Another one.
See you tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.